Hello, everyone. Welcome to a sharing session by the Center for Interfaith Understanding Singapore. My name is Imran, and I'm from the Center for Interfaith Understanding Singapore, or CIFU in short. So thank you for joining us for tonight's sharing session. And we are very fortunate to have with us a very young undergraduate student who is also serving as an intern in the center. And his name is Yibo Wang. And very interestingly, Yibo actually was born in Xinjiang, China, and he moved to Singapore when he was 12 years old. And we thought that given the current focus on Xinjiang and also the situation of the Uyghurs in China, I thought that it's very interesting to hear from the perspective of someone who actually grew up in Xinjiang in the early years of his childhood, as well as still having relatives and families there. But this is more of a sharing session where Yibo will share about his own personal encounters with Muslims in Xinjiang. And do take note that this is not a discussion on the political affairs, neither is it an analysis of the current political situation in Xinjiang, China, but rather Yibo will be sharing more from his personal experiences and comparing his childhood memories in Xinjiang with his current stint in Singapore, where he is studying at the Yale NUS College, and he hopes to actually major in anthropology one day. And of course, he has a huge interest in the diversity and multiculturalism scene in Singapore, and he has been following Sifu in some of the visits to various places of interest where the unique and dynamic character of religious practices in Singapore occurred. So we thought that it would be a very nice session where Yibo can actually share some of his memories as well as what he know about the Muslims in China. Of course, here in Singapore, sometimes we conflate ethnicity with religion. And when we think of Muslims, we often thought that they are conflated with the idea of Malay. But actually, there are more Chinese Muslims in China than Muslims here in this part of the world. With the exception of perhaps Indonesia. So that will be interesting for us to open our eyes and hear some of the experiences, as well as to know a bit about the detailed facts about Muslims in China. And of course, it's not a homogeneous group. And I'm pretty sure you will be explaining the differences among the various ethnic groups and the various types of Muslim communities there in China. So let's call upon Yibo to start your sharing now, Yibo.
Thanks so much, Imran. So I will begin my sharing. Okay, so hi everyone. Thanks. I'm Yibo. Thanks so much, Imran, for introducing me. So I'm currently an undergraduate student at Yale NUS College, and today I'll be sharing a very brief introduction to Xinjiang. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about where Xinjiang is and what exactly this place is. So Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region is located in the northwestern China. As the name suggests, Xinjiang is one of the China's 5 autonomous regions for ethnic minorities. So for autonomous region, it basically means this part has been inhabited with a majority of ethnicity that's different from the Han Chinese. So covering of an area of 1.66 million square kilometers is a provincial administrative region with the largest land area in China, accounting for 1/6 of China's total land area. So basically, this province is 1/6 of the entire China. And to put it into perspective, Singapore is around 728 square kilometers. So the single province of Xinjiang is roughly the size of 2,280 Singapore. And moreover, Xinjiang has a land border of more than 1,000 kilometers. So it's bordering a lot of other countries. You can see from the map, it's bordering Russia, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, and a lot of different other countries. And like what Imran has covered just now. So in China, we basically differentiate different groups by ethnic groups. So it's different from race, but it's kind of covering the same concept. So there are 56 ethnic groups in Xinjiang, mainly inhabited by ethnic groups such as Han, Uyghurs, Kazakhs, Hui, and all the other groups. But among them, many ethnic groups such as the Uyghurs, Kazakh, Hui, Uzbek, they follow Islam faith. And today I will be focusing on two specific ethnicities that follow the Islam faith. That will be Uyghur and the Hui. First of all, the Uyghurs. The Muslim in Xinjiang, the Uyghurs. So who exactly are the Uyghurs? So Uyghurs are one of the official ethnic groups in Xinjiang, originating from and culturally affiliated with the general region of Central and East Asia. So they are not recognized to be native to the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. And their ethnic language, which is very interesting, the Uyghurs is very distinct from the Mandarin Chinese. They use a different script. They talk, when they speak, it's totally different from the mainland Chinese. The modern Uyghur language is classified under the Kulor branch of the Turkic language family. So the language has adopted a number of scripts for their language, the Arabic script, as well as the newly formed the Latin scripts, which was adopted in the 21st century. So a little fun fact, the word Uyghur actually means union, alliance, and unity in the Uyghur language. And there has been a point of contention. So what exactly are the lineage of Uyghur ethnicity if they are so distinct from Han? And there are two different narratives to this contention. The first one is the Uyghurs are ethnically Turkic people, as its language is closely related to Turkish. And a very interesting point is, so Turkey is also a Turkic country. The Uyghurs have been largely able to integrate within the Turkic community. Turkey, the country, has been the home of a sizable Uyghurs population in the Middle East migrating from Xinjiang. So as a result, one of the popular belief is that the Uyghurs are direct descendants of the Turkic people. And the second narrative, which is the official narrative in China, is that the main ancestors of Uyghurs were the people who lived in Mongolian Plateau during the Tang Dynasty. And the group came into being through a long process of migration and integration. So historically, to resist oppression and the slavery by Turks, the Uyghur people united and formed this very distinct group called the Uyghurs. So in Yuan and Ming Dynasty, other ethnicities such as the Mongols have kind of fused into this ethnicity and merged and formed a very new distinct ethnicity group that comes into known today as the Uyghurs. And so historically, the Uyghurs have inhabited a series of oases scattered around the Taklamagan Desert within the Turin Basin. So they either existed as an independent state or was controlled by many different civilizations back then, including China during the dynasty period, and Mongols during the Ming Dynasty, and as well as the Tibetan for a certain period of time. So now, an estimated 80% of Xinjiang's Uyghurs still live in the Turin Basin. The rest of Xinjiang's Uyghurs mostly live in Urumqi, the capital city of Xinjiang, and also significantly, a lot of these porous communities of Uyghurs exist in other Turkic countries, such as the one we mentioned before, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkey. Another very interesting part about the Uyghur culture is that the ancient Uyghurs have followed many different religions, so they only became Islamized in very recent time. So other religions that the Uyghurs have followed, such as Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, and some even believe in Church of the East. So people in the Western Turin Basin region began their conversion to Islam early in the 10th century. Some pre-Islam practices continue under the Muslim rule. So for example, the Quran dictates many rules of the marriage and divorce, and other pre-Islamic principles based on Zoroastrianism also kind of, help shape the law and shape the land a little bit. So there had been some Christian conversion in the late 19th century and early 20th century, but it has never been very large scale and rapid. And so the Uyghurs gradually started to become Islamized in the 10th century, and most Uyghurs identify as Muslim by the 16th century. So Islam has since played a very, very important role in Uyghur culture and identity. So for example, here are some common practices. Since the arrival of Islam, most Uyghurs have used Arabic names, while traditional Uyghur names have only been used by some. And Uyghurs greet each other with a common Islam saying, "Peace be upon you." And also, Uyghurs celebrate many Islamic holidays, as the one that's listed here, which is also commonly celebrated in Singapore. Modern Uyghurs are primarily Muslim, and they are the second largest predominant Muslim ethnicity in China after the Hui ethnicity, which I'll be introducing a bit. And the majority of modern Uyghurs are Sunnis, while modern Uyghurs consider Islam to be part of their identity. Religious observation varies between different religions. So in general, the southern part of Xinjiang, the Kashgar in particular, are more conservative. So for example, women tend to wear a veil more often, and in Kashgar than in other part of Xinjiang. Although both are Muslim, there exists a general split between the Uyghurs and the Hui Muslims in Xinjiang, as they normally worship in different mosques. So mosques are usually built separately for the Uyghurs community and also for the Hui community. So I'll be talking a little bit about my personal experience with the Uyghurs. So one of the things that I really love would be the food that's available in Xinjiang. And usually, because of the Muslim population, the food is predominantly halal, but it's very nicely fusion between the Middle Eastern food with Chinese food. So noodle forms the main part of traditional Uyghur diet, further characterized by a heavy emphasis on meat such as mutton, beef, and chicken. Signature dishes include some very famous Middle Eastern dish like kebab and roasted fish and naan, but it's kind of like being filled with a Chinese flavor in it. So you can see from the picture, this is kind of like the mutton on stools and also like rice with mutton. Here are other different example of how the Chinese culture has kind of integrated into the Uyghurs cuisine a little bit. So this is the one on the left is a Uyghur style grilled mutton bao, which is quite uncommon in other part of China, because when we think about bao, it's usually cooked with pork. But in Xinjiang, we kind of adapted it and made it into a mutton bao. And another one is a big plate chicken with a handful noodles. Like I said just now, noodle forms a very predominant part of the diet, the Uyghur diet. So yeah. Another very interesting thing is the most significant place is the Uyghur Bazaar, also known as the Uyghur Market. So there you can find all kinds of local stuff ranging from clothes, food, handcrafts, and just a lot of very interesting local stuff. It's somewhat equivalent to the Singapore concept of wet market, where you can just go there and just shop around in different houses. Yeah. Here are more examples. You can see the one on the right, this is traditional Uyghur handcrafts. And also they sell fruits, they sell vegetables. So yeah, it's pretty much similar to the Singapore concept of wet market. And the second ethnic group I'll be introducing will be the Hui. And they're also, they've also followed Islam, but they're somewhat different from the Uyghurs. So the Hui people are an East Asian ethno-religious group, predominantly composed Chinese-speaking adherents of Islam distributed in China. The Hui people are also the biggest Muslim ethnic groups occupying around 18% of the Muslim population in China. So according to a 2011 census, China is home to approximately 10.5 million Hui people, the majority of whom are Chinese-speaking practitioners of Islam, though some may practice other religions. So being a Hui doesn't strictly imply that you are Muslim. That's kind of different from the Uyghur ethnic group. So the Hui predominantly speak Chinese and is unique among the Chinese ethnic minority in that it associates with no non-Sinic languages. That means the Hui people, they don't really have their own languages like the Uyghurs have for their very unique script, Arabic scripts. For most Hui ethnic people speak Chinese. So another question would be, are the Hui people just racially Chinese people who follow Islam? Well, the answer to that would be yes and no. So no, first of all, no, Huis are somewhat different racially from the Han people. So most Hui people have ancestry directly descending from the Silk Road travelers. Their ancestors including Central Asians and Middle Eastern ethnic groups, such as the Arabs who intermarried with local Han Chinese. So they kind of descend of mixture of both. That offers a little bit different from the Han Chinese. West Eurasian DNA is prevalent, around 6.7 of Hui people maternal genetics have a Central Asian and Middle Eastern origin. But on the other hand, no, not really. Some of the Hui people are kind of genetically similar to the Han Chinese. So the Chinese government also defines the Hui people to include all historically Muslim communities not included in China's other ethnic group. So hence, some of the Hui people can be Han who follow Islam. So they are therefore distinct from other Muslim groups such as the Uyghurs in that the ethnicity is more of a ethno-religious group rather than a racial group. So at the same time, the Chinese government is also identify Hui by their ancestry and hence include those who do not practice Islam. Nowadays, it's common to find Hui people in the province of Fujian and Yunnan who are Arab ancestry but are no longer Muslim. So it's kind of a weird group that has a mixture of both. Some are the common ones who are, have a different ancestry and they practice Muslim, but there's also a different spectrum to this. Some are have Arabic ancestry but do not practice Islam, and some practice Islam but they're practically just Chinese-speaking Islam followers. And another part of this is the Hui culture has distinct differences from the majority Chinese culture that developed from the practice of Islam. So for example, as Muslims, we follow Islam dietary laws and reject the consumption of pork, the most common meat consumed in China, and have given rise to their own variation of Chinese cuisines. Traditional Hui clothing differ from that of the Han Chinese, primarily in that some men wear white caps and some women wear handscarves. However, since the industrialization and modernization of China, most young Hui people wear the same clothes as mainstream fashion trends. So it's very difficult to kind of tell Hui people apart from the majority Han Chinese. The long story of Hui residents and mixing in China had led to the Hui to adopt names typically of Han-like neighbors. So this is also a very interesting part where the ethnic group kind of integrate into the Chinese mainstream society. However, some common Hui names are actually Chinese renderings of more common Muslim and Central Asian names. So for example, you can see from the slides here, both Ma and Mu is kind of a short form for Muhammad, which is a very common Islam name, and Ha stands for Haslam, and Hu also stands for Hussein. So all these are kind of, it's a very interesting integration of the Islam culture into the main Chinese society. Yeah. So my personal experience with the Hui. So although most Hui people can be found in Xinjiang and Ningxia, which Ningxia is also one of the 5 autonomous regions. It's called the Ningxia Hui Autonomous Region. It's populated mainly by the Hui people. People are the Hui people are actually very spread out across China. So in many major cities like Beijing and Shanghai, you can find the diaspora called Hui Street, where unique cuisines and Islamic culture can be found. So the picture I show here, you can see this is one Xi'an, I believe. So in the street, it's like a mini version of Chinatown. So most of the Hui look almost indistinguishable from the Han Chinese. And so the last part of it, I will be doing a very short comparison between my experience of living in Xinjiang and my experience living in Singapore. So like Xinjiang is mostly populated by the Islam followers, but in Singapore it's a very small percentage. So to put it into perspective, you can see that a religious distribution. So in Singapore, a population of 5.9 million, only 14% of which follow the Islam faith. But in comparison, in Xinjiang, it's a very large 60% majority that follow the Islam faith. And given that Xinjiang has a much larger population of nearly 26 million, that's a very big number. And the second part is, so in Singapore, the total number of mosques is around 72, as the official recognized ones. But in Xinjiang, the number is much, much larger. So the total number of mosques in Xinjiang is around 24,000. And so generally in Xinjiang, there's a greater presence of minority culture and language. So you can see from the pictures here, major chain restaurants, basically all the restaurants in China in Xinjiang are required to have their name written out in both Chinese and the Uyghur scripts. And also at the same time, the directions and basically all these signboards are also required to have dual languages. So even in school, basically passports and stuff, most of them are written out in both Chinese and the Uyghur script. So I would say that there's a greater presence of minority culture and language in Xinjiang as compared to in Singapore, because everything is kind of predominantly English. Yeah, thank you so much. So that will be my very short sharing.
Thank you so much, Yibo. We can off your share screen. Yeah, thank you. That was really excellent presentation. I mean, for those who do not know about Muslims in China or in Xinjiang, I think that's a very great overview. For those who are watching us live on Facebook, please type your comments or your questions, and I'll be reading from them. Okay, Yibo, there's a question here coming from Francois. Why are the Uyghurs and the Hui worshipping in different mosques? Is it because of differences in language?
I'm not too sure about that actually, but mostly as I've heard, it has been this way for a long time. So the Uyghurs have a very distinct community. They speak language among themselves, and the Huis are mostly very Chinese looking, I would say. They are very, so in a sense that they don't really worship in the same mosque. I'm not too sure about that either.
Right. Yeah. Possibly because they see themselves as two distinct ethnic group. Yeah.
Yeah, because the Uyghurs are mainly populated in Xinjiang, and the Hui are kind of more spread out across the entire China. Yeah.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's quite similar when you find like the Turkish community sometimes have their own mosque, and the South Asians who have their own mosque. So because they see themselves through the ethnic lens. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes me wonder, what do you think is the relationship between these communities, between the Huis, the Hans, and the Uyghurs? Do they see themselves as through the lens they are all Muslims that somehow tie them together, or that consciousness is not there? Instead, they see themselves primarily through the ethnic category and not from the Muslim identity that binds all of them.
I feel that actually from my experience, I feel they're more similar than different because like in daily life, they're kind of the entire Muslim community, they are quite united because you can't really, in a sense that because they have the exact same faith, although they're celebrated differently, they have different cultures. But religious wise, I think they're more closely united. But it just, I guess, in daily life, I feel, yeah, I would personally say that they're more united than different in a sense. Yeah.
Do they intermarry with each other?
Yeah, intermarriage is quite often among the Uyghurs and the Huis because across, like as far as I know, so it's very uncommon for a Han or Hui to marry Chinese because a Han Chinese because that requires like a conversion into the faith. But among between these two religious groups, it's actually pretty common.
Okay. Sorry, just a follow-up to that. What about the global consciousness being Muslims? Does that feature in the Xinjiang region where, for example, they identify with the Muslim world at large in other parts of the world, or they are quite an isolated community just within their own area and territory? Are they aware of, for example, some of the issues happening in other parts of the Muslim world, and therefore it also affects them because of their similar Islamic identity that they have? Like what is happening, say, let's say, well, in Palestine, for example, do they identify with those Muslims in other parts of the world, or not? Yeah.
Yeah, I feel I think they are quite, in that sense, they are quite separate because I feel the Uyghurs are more closely related to the Middle Eastern part, and so that they identify with the larger Muslim community globally more closely. But for the Huis, I would say that because most of them, in my experience, I feel like they are pretty closely linked to the Han Chinese in a sense because they are ethnically similar. They speak the same language. So I feel like if it really comes into comparison, I would say like for the Uyghurs, the faith is kind of above the ethnicity, but for the Huis, it's more like the other way around. So like the ethnicity is more predominant than the faith.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a question from Y Kid, and I guess it's along the same vein. In school, do the Uyghur, the Hui, and the Han Chinese students mix? And what was your educational experience like as a Han Chinese student in Xinjiang?
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a very interesting question. Talk a little bit about the education system in Xinjiang. So it's kind of like split between like two languages. So one is the main Chinese education, the other is like the vernacular language, which is the Uyghurs. So for most Chinese, it's kind of like automatically you are kind of going to the Chinese medium school. But for the Uyghurs, they are kind of given a choice. So they can choose either to go to a Uyghur education school or Chinese education school. So as you know, as China gets more modernized, a lot of Uyghurs kind of choose to go to Chinese schools because it kind of implies a better, job opportunities and later better integration into like other parts of China, like Shanghai or Beijing, which does not have, this kind of like minority presence. So that really depends on the individual Uyghurs which education do they choose to go through. But as far as I know, like basically all the exams, the national exams, like the A levels or whatever, those are always offered in both languages. And in other small informal parts, like basically like driving license, all those are also offered in two mediums. So growing up in Xinjiang, I went to a Han school. So mostly it's the Han Chinese and quite a number of the Hui Chinese, Hui Muslim, but very little Uyghurs were there in my school. Yeah.
Interesting. So you're saying that there's the Chinese national school and there's also the vernacular schools in their local languages, but the curriculum is actually standardized.
The curriculum is somewhat similar, yeah, because they eventually have to take the same exams.
Yeah. So when you went to school, do you get to mix with the Muslims much, and what were your experiences? Do you have Muslim friends, and maybe you can share a bit?
Yeah. So I went to a Chinese school, and like I said, a lot of Muslim friends I had was like mostly Hui. There wasn't much Uyghurs. The Uyghurs are mostly in like basically a different part of Xinjiang mostly, and also like their own schools. So with Hui, like I said previously, they're somewhat very similar to the Han Chinese. So it's very hard to tell them apart, especially since like in most Chinese schools, you don't really like eat in the dining hall. You don't really have, you have like the very long lunch break for like 3 hours for you to go home and have meals. So it's very, because there's not a lot of opportunity to like eat together when we're young. So it's very hard to tell like who are the Hans, who are the Huis. So it's only like, you know, sometimes when we're talking about this kind of thing, oh, then we'll realize, oh, you're actually not Han, you're Hui. So it's only in very small occasion you can tell a difference, but mostly it's very indistinguishable. Yeah.
Right. What about the religious education of the Muslims there? I mean, where do they get their religious education?
So I feel like for the quiz I know, so it's basically a lot of time is home taught. So in the general education system in China, it's very secular. So you are not, mostly the public schools, they're not allowed to have any religious affiliation at all. So any kind of like Christianity, Islam, all those are not allowed to be taught in like the main public schools. So a lot of times I would say like it's more like a home based, yeah, religious education.
I see. Okay, there's a question from Ashraf Anwar. Is there an official Islamic council or an organization or something like the figurehead of the Mufti, which is the highest religious personnel that represents the Muslims there?
Yeah, there are some, like because there are different church, there are different mosques and stuff. So there are like a central organization which also oversees all this kind of like halal certification and all those things. So yeah, there is, but more detail about organization I'm not very sure of. Yeah.
Right. Are they under the central control of the state, or it's all independent bodies?
I would think that they are under the central government. Yeah, but I'm not too sure about that.
Not too
Yeah.
sure. Okay. So
Yeah.
Okay. There's another question by Sun Jiemin. What has been your experience communicating with the Uyghur people? Do most of them speak Mandarin or other languages?
So I guess although like the majority of like Xinjiang is Uyghur population, but in a sense like we kind of take it for granted like Chinese is the main national language. So like in school, because we're not taught Uyghur, we kind of only know like some normal daily phrases to communicate with them, but mostly in terms of communication, it's more like communicating in Chinese, in Mandarin.
In Mandarin.
Yeah.
So the Uyghurs also they do communicate in Mandarin and
yeah, but among themselves they
okay. So you have very little contact with the Uyghurs generally because they are in a different part of Xinjiang.
In my city not too much, but like in the nearby cities where we travel and stuff, there are quite a lot. Yeah.
Sorry, what city were you in?
I came from Hami, so it's like the nearest city to like the mainland China. So like it's the first stop into Xinjiang.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So yeah, the further you go into Xinjiang, the more it gets.
Okay. There's an interesting question here from Guat. Are there mosques for women in Xinjiang and women imams there? I think she's asking this because it's there has been news report about mosques that were specifically for women only, and there were women imams. This has been in the news, and also there's been some scholarly writings about this very interesting legacy of the Muslims in China.
Yeah, that's true. I've seen news about it, but I personally have not like visited or like seen one of these in person. Yeah, but I would definitely see news about it. I would love to visit, like to know more about it one day.
So there are such mosques in Xinjiang area.
Yeah, I've heard of it from my friends.
What about the female participation in the religious life of the people in Xinjiang? Were the women quite active, or do you find that it's quite similar like in other Muslim societies where it's predominantly male and the women play a supportive role, or it's different in Xinjiang, or it's similar?
I feel it's pretty much similar. Yeah, so a lot of times when we interact with like the Uyghurs, like basically with like bi stuff or whatever, it's mostly like the male. Yeah, the female always plays like a supportive role. Yeah, that's why I see my experience. Yeah.
Okay, there's a question here from Lina Sakina. Are you aware of any inter-religious or inter-ethnic issues that the Muslim communities face in China? And if yes, do you mind sharing some examples? So what are some of the issues, inter-religious issues or inter-ethnic issues facing the Muslims in China?
Inter-religious. Let me think about
Yeah,
it.
okay, let's put it this way. How's the relationship of the Muslims with people of other religions? Yeah.
I think it's two distinct cases because for Hui and the Uyghurs, they are quite different. For Hui, they are generally quite close to the Chinese. So my parents, they have quite a lot of Hui friends, and we always go to their houses to celebrate Eid and stuff. But for the Uyghurs, I guess there is like a language barrier between them and the Chinese. So generally, so when I heard a lot of stories from my parents when they first moved to Xinjiang like 50 years ago, when they were basically they're working a lot like on the desert and stuff that's mainly populated by the Uyghurs, like away from the cities, and they were very helpful. That stories I heard from my parents. And so yeah, as far as my part of the Xinjiang and the ones I've heard, the religious relations are pretty okay. Yeah, but the one with Chinese and the Hui's are pretty good. But the one with the Han and the Uyghurs, some are kind of like it's more like just a strange, not really any tension, I would say. Yeah.
So it's more between the Hans and the Uyghurs.
Yeah.
Um, is there some historical reason of this tension between these two ethnic communities?
Yeah, I mean, the tension mainly arises from like the entire history behind like the territory conflict. So whether Xinjiang is a part of China or there's kind of like independent movement in Xinjiang mainly. Yeah, so I guess that's why it's kind of like a different case with the Uyghurs and the Hui. So although both are Muslims, but the relationship are different. I think the difference is not did not arise from like religion, but rather more of like the entire historical territory conflict. Yeah.
I see. Possibly because the Hans on the eastern side where the Uyghurs trace their origin to the Turkic region. So it's more of that kind of dynamics rather than a simple fact that they are Muslims. Yeah. Because there seems to be quite little issues with Han Muslims or other even the Hui Muslims. It's largely the Uyghurs, and that has been dominating much of the news also.
Yeah, because the Hui also have their own autonomous region, and there's very little news and tension going on between there. Yeah, so I would say it's not really like a religious conflict. If anything, it's more like a ethnicity, conflict. Yeah.
I see. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Okay, there's a question again from Ashraf. In your point of view, do you mind sharing their approach to interfaith engagement? The Muslims there, because they are minorities, so definitely they also have to reach out to other communities. Yeah. So what's their approach like? What's their interfaith engagements like? And how practicing or how religious are these religious communities? That means, are they really how observant are they as Muslims, or as what we saw in some parts of Russia, a lot of the Muslim heritage is largely gone or not being practiced much. So what's the level of religiosity of the Muslims in Xinjiang?
Right. Yeah, I would say personally, the Muslims I've interacted with, they're quite like devoted in the faith. So most of them observe very strictly to all these kind of traditions and stuff. So when I went to my parents' friend's house, so they are Hui Muslims. So every time they are very welcoming, they invite us to go eat and stuff. But like they're very strict because I mean, we understand we have like different kind of they have different kind of utensils for the Muslim visitors and different kind of utensils for the non-Muslim visitors, and we kind of respect that because like we have different dietary requirements and it's kind of different. So I would say they're quite religious. So in another sense, with respect to like integration, I would say like from my perspective, I feel like because the larger area of China is somewhat circular, and so it kind of manifests in kind of the education system. We don't really talk about religion, or we don't really talk about like this kind of understanding. It's more like just kind of like blanket all ethnicities under this kind of like a circular umbrella. It's somewhat similar to like like a little bit like France, I would say, because it's more like in public space, we don't really talk about like religion. In school, we don't really mention about like different faiths. It's more like, oh, we need to promote more understanding between ethnicities, but they don't really like explicitly say what the differences, which is religion part. So I feel like the larger education part is not very accommodating-ish.
I see. So in a public sphere, it's largely secular, and you find very little expressions of religiosity. But of course, they are very devoted Muslims in their own private sphere. They practice Islam, and according to the heritage. That's interesting. Now let's for those who are watching us on Facebook Live, do drop your comments and questions. I know there've been plenty of questions coming at you, Yibo, so I hope you're okay to take a few more. I want to ask more about your personal experience here in Singapore, being Chinese, and also not just Chinese, but also someone who came from China at the age of 12 and has also been here for quite a long time and been through the education system here. What about your experience as well as your impressions of the Muslim minorities here, vis-a-vis of what you have explained about your encounters with Muslims in Xinjiang? Are they quite similar? If it's slightly different, what are they? And how's your experience with the Muslim minorities here? Because sorry, one thing. In Xinjiang, you are the minority, am I right?
I'm considered a minority.
So when you are here, then you are the majority. So how does that dynamics work? Does it shape your experience, your worldview, your thinking? Maybe you can share a bit more about that.
So I feel like when I came to Singapore when I was really young, around like 12, and when I was like put into a local secondary school, I feel like I was more prepared to like interact with the Muslims in a sense, because I feel like growing up in Xinjiang, like we kind of take it for granted that a lot of things are quite accommodating in a sense. So I feel like one of the hardest things that I first realized is like going out with friends who are Islam in Singapore. We have to like find restaurants that halal. So that's one very important thing. But I feel like that's what we take for granted in Xinjiang, because most of the restaurants that we go to are halal in Xinjiang. So like beside all the like very Chinese ones, mostly are pretty much halal. Even the ones opened up by like the Han Chinese, they try their best to kind of like put everything to follow to get us halal certified. So I think that's one of the thing. And also a very important thing is I feel like in another way, I feel like Singapore has more like structural accommodations to like face, because when I came to Singapore in secondary school, I realized like there was like there's kind of like if you're Muslim, you're allowed to leave school early on Friday for prayers, which was something like I never thought before when I was in Xinjiang. It was more like I wasn't really aware that there was this thing, because there was no structural, policies or whatever accommodation made for religious groups. But in Xinjiang, but in Singapore, I feel like there was done really well.
Interesting. Now you make me reflect. You know, when I go to Malaysia or Indonesia, like the food there, I take for granted. You know, it's halal because it's Muslim majority, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's very interesting observation, uh, um, and also the structural accommodation towards the religious minorities that you mentioned here in Singapore, which yeah, that's something that is interesting. There's a question that comes in from Dr. Phyllis Chu. There's so much Western news these days about China suppression and genocide of minorities in Xinjiang. To what extent is this true? I know initially I started off by saying we are not here to talk about the politics in Xinjiang. Maybe if I can rephrase that, do you think that what we read in the news is something that is alarming? Or maybe, you know, there could be a difference because, you know, it's something that is much more recent. Maybe it's not there in your earlier years when you were growing up there. I'm not sure. If you can share more of your experience observing about the situation from your personal perspective, yeah?
Mm. Yeah, I think one very important thing that I shared just now was I I personally feel like whatever that's happening in Xinjiang, it shouldn't be seen like a religious tension kind of light. It's more like an ethnic conflict. I feel like there's a very important difference here because I feel like a lot of Western media kind of like put this entire conflict on the light of religious persecution and all these things, which I personally, when I first read the news, I feel like that's not very true because, you know, in comparison, there are many other Muslim community in Xinjiang which has been like kind of just blanket and covered over with. And I feel like let's first of all, that's kind of an unfair statement to like kind of just blanket everything under. But in another sense, I personally can't say whether this thing is whether true or not true or whatever it is. But I feel like yeah, this is something that's alarming. It's kind of alarming because the conflict between like the Han majority and like the Uyghurs minority has been going on for quite a while. So I remember growing up in Xinjiang as around 2008 and 2009, there was a very large riot in Xinjiang about like the pro-independence, and I feel like that kind of set a tone for the entire policies that come afterwards. So the entire independent movement was something that I feel like China could kind of handle better in a sense. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's quite similar in many other parts of the world where sometimes territories and boundaries were contested, right? I mean, we saw, for example, in the Rakhine State in Myanmar, it's we can't say that it's a conflict between the Muslims and the Buddhists. It's got to do with the ethnic dimensions that's there, and also the boundaries. The same thing we observe in southern Thailand, in Patani, even in Mindanao. So
Yeah.
I suppose Tibet also is another contested region, and we can't see that as a conflict with Buddhism, right? It's largely got to do with the history of it. So it's a very complex thing, and I think you are right to mention that it should not be seen through a very simplistic lens, that this is a kind of simply a persecution based on religion. Of course, you can also deny that there are some religious dimensions in some of these
Yeah.
issues, but it's much more complex than that. Thank you for raising that. Another question from Ashraf. From your personal perspective, okay, name one thing, or can be more than that, that Singapore can learn from Xinjiang. Kind of a Miss Universe question. Give us one thing that we can learn from Xinjiang.
Let me think about it. I feel, if anything, it would be the vernacular education. I feel like in Singapore, what Singapore has mainly is the Chinese vernacular education, like with this entire recent thing about racism in Singapore, like why the entire SEP school and whatever. I feel like it should have more coverage with other minorities as well. Like for example, I feel like what Xinjiang has done, one thing that's pretty well is like I feel the entire vernacular education system or vernacular language usage has been quite comprehensive. Like I was quite surprised to realize that after leaving Xinjiang that everything in my life is kind of like dual language, like my passport, because my passport was issued in Xinjiang, everything was like Chinese and Uyghurs, and also my ICs was also kind of like dual language, and all the road signs and whatever, like it's dual language. So I feel like this vernacular language usage could be promoted more in Singapore, and it's not only just the Chinese English and also different languages and English. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we'll get there one day where we have a third language other than our mother tongue and English. Yeah. In some areas in Singapore, actually there are 4 languages in some MRT stations. You can see that because these 4 languages are seen as the official languages of Singapore. But you are right that we can do more to learn the language of the others beyond our mother tongue and also just English. Yeah. Okay, one question from Waikit. Do you foresee returning to Xinjiang to live and work in the long term? Or you rather be here in Singapore, or what's your future plans?
Well, I feel for my future plans, I mean, I've been here for quite a long time, and I would definitely love to learn more about Xinjiang, to do more research and like for personal like interest. But I feel probably will be settled in Singapore. Yeah.
But your family's all still in Xinjiang, yeah?
Yeah, my families are all back in Xinjiang.
Yeah. Do you miss them? I mean, I know COVID, you can't go there and they can't visit you.
Yeah, it has been a while since I last traveled back to China. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we hope the borders will open so that we can all travel again. Okay. I think, yeah, thank you for sharing so much. I just have one question for you. Being Chinese and coming from Xinjiang in China, what do you observe about the interactions between the local Chinese in Singapore and the Chinese who come from mainland? And you yourself, do they see you as Singaporean? I know your accent doesn't sound like Singaporean yet. So
Yeah.
probably they see you as not being here, not from here. But actually, you've been here since 12, right?
Yeah.
And you're pretty much imbibing in the culture of Singapore and all that. But how's the relationship that you observe so far?
I feel like, first of all, I feel like that's something I took for granted for quite a long time. Although I'm a foreigner, but being Chinese does offer me quite a lot of like being better to integrate into the society than any other foreigners. So I feel like that's one part that's quite important. But among like the Chinese and the mainland Chinese, I feel like there has been, when I was young in secondary school, I mean people were pretty young and they kind of they kind of say things that are quite like reckless or whatever. So I feel like there has been quite a lot of like interaction that's kind of xenophobic or things like that. But as growing older, going to like JC, coming to uni, I feel like this kind of interaction become significantly lesser. Yeah, so I feel like it's more like, it's not really like people are vicious, it's more like people are careless with what I'm saying and things like that. Yeah,
because they are not familiar and yes, sometimes they project certain fear also because they're not sure what they're dealing with because you are Chinese but then somehow different from local Chinese. Sometimes there's that dynamic also. Interesting. So we've had quite a good conversation today, and thank you for sharing and running through a bit of the historical and factual dimensions of the different Muslim ethnic groups. So now we know at least the Muslims in China is not a monolithic category. And there's also the different ethnic groups. There's the Hui Chinese, the Han Chinese, the Uyghurs, and all with their own set of histories. And China is such a big country, and that's why a lot of this diversity may pose a challenge, can sometimes bring up tensions, but I think it's how we manage the diversity within that space that matters. I mean, Singapore is also a very deeply multicultural, multi-religious society, and we've managed pretty well so far. But of course, there are issues still to be worked out. And similarly, all other countries also have these kind of dimensions. I mean, we live in a globalized world where movement of people across the globe also means that the future is much more diverse than what we would imagine in the past. So that has to be taken into mind how we navigate through this diversity. So thank you, and I really hope that you will be able to pursue your interest in anthropology, and all the best in your studies. And hopefully you can contribute much more to Singapore with your academic endeavors. Thank you, Yibo.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
All right, have
All
a
right.
good night. Thank you everyone for watching, and hope to see you again in the next Sifu sharing session. Good night.